My name's J. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Dedicated to the only serious choice, the gospel of Jesus Christ, music and the spoken word. You're watching Light Source Victory Television live with me, your host, Pastor J. McCauley, inviting you to sit back and relax for the next 55 minutes or so as we continue our journey into the life-changing, life-giving, everlasting word of the Most High God. My friends, let's get started. On your screen, the life-changing, life-giving, everlasting word. Grab your Bible, pencil, paper. Let's take our journey. Amen. Are you chosen? All right, one of my favorite songs. That one and Sirius. And all right, let's get started. I'll sit here. I'll listen to the whole Kingdom album tonight instead of doing Bible study. Let's go. On your screen, there it is. This is where we were when we were last together. And so, if you missed that, you can go to accesstv.org and go to channel 10, and you can get caught up. Or you could scroll back on whatever platform you are watching the program. If you scroll back in time, you'll find previous episodes or previous programs of our Bible study, or even better yet, you can read it for yourself in the Word. All right, we are in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 1. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 1. The main focus of our message today, as it is every day, is a very simple one. Jesus is Lord of Lords and King of Kings. He alone saves and changes lives. And it is my mission, as I do these programs, continuing a almost 40-year tradition. It is my mission to help people understand that, give them the opportunity to have access to the information that hopefully will cause them to choose Christ. I know there's a lot of Jesus hesitancy out there, but if you trust him, your life will change. If you try him, your life will change. He has the capacity, the will, and the desire to save you from an eternity separated from him. All right? So death is ultimately eternal separation from the Lord at the end of the day. All right? So Ecclesiastes can be kind of tight. It's kind of a rough read if you read it without understanding the end. And so let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. That's how Ecclesiastes ends in chapter 12. We're here in 4, but in chapter 12 it says, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter." Right? You've read all that's there. You've learned all the wisdom that he learned in the first 11 chapters. And at the end it says, "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." So let's read it. Chapter 4, then we'll come back and read it again, study it a little bit. All right, we're gonna read, then we're gonna go back to the beginning and study. All right. This is going to be we'll read it in the King James, and then we will go back and study it in the New Living Translation. So we'll pull up the King James, and we'll read all the way down through. And then we'll come back. All right? And that'll be our program for the night. So I returned and considered all the oppressions that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of such as were oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the side of their oppressors was great power, but they had no comforter. Wherefore I praised the dead, which were already dead, more than the living, which are yet alive. Yea, better is he than both they, which hath not yet been, who hath not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Verse 4 at the top of your screen. We're currently reading in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 4. Again, I considered all the travail and every right work that is for this a man is envied by his neighbors. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. The fool foldeth his hands together and eateth his own flesh. Better is an handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. Reading out of the King James, verse 7, chapter 4, Ecclesiastes. And we're going to come back and we're going to read it out of the Modern English version. We'll study it in the Modern English. Then I returned and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone, and there is not a second. Yea, he hath neither child nor brother, yet is there no end of his labor. Neither is his eye satisfied with riches. Neither saith he, for whom do I labor, and bereave my soul of good? This is also vanity. Yea, it is a sore travail. Verse 9. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king, who will no more be admonished. For out of prison he cometh to reign, whereas also he that is born in his kingdom becometh poor. I consider all the living which walk under the sun, with the second child that shall stand up in his stead. There is no end of the people. Verse 16, top of the screen. You're watching Light Source Victory Television Live. We're reading down through chapter 4 of Ecclesiastes. Now, when I get to the end of verse 16, I'm going to go back to the beginning. Then we're going to study our way through. There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and vexation of spirit. So let's go back. put some context on this and read it out of the modern English, because the Old English is not easily understood. We don't speak Old English anymore. All right. It's sort of like being in certain parts of the country where they have local dialects and local words and colloquialisms. I think that's the right way to say that. And so it's hard to understand who they was with. I mean, if you don't understand what that means, who they was with, who were they with, or who was with them? Davy, Hebe, Shebe, right? Verse 1, chapter 4, Ecclesiastes. Modern English. This is a New Living Translation. So let's study this. Solomon gave his heart to know all the things that could be known. He kept nothing from himself in terms of experience. And through it all, he found that it left him empty and void. Vanity, vexation of spirit. The spirit was not enriched. There was no spiritual or fleshly satisfaction from the things he gave himself to know. And in the end, the only thing that mattered was God. Serve God and keep his commandments, right? Fear the Lord, reverence the Lord, and keep his commandments. That's the whole duty of man. Nothing that people do satisfies them. There's always the next thing that needs to be done. All right. People lament of all the things that go on the earth. And to what avail? I mean, even if you can fix it, it doesn't undo the damage that was done by the oppression, right? So he looks at all these things. He studies all these things. And now here in chapter 4, we find his study of oppression. Again, I observed all the oppression that takes place under the sun, right? I saw the tears of the oppressed with no one to comfort them. The oppressors have great power, and their victims are helpless. Helpless. Now, here you are on a crusade to help alleviate the plight of the oppressed. And what happens to you? Is their plight alleviated? I mean, you're outraged. I won't stand for it anymore. As though your refusal to stand for it going to change anything. Now, I don't say that to rob you of the zeal for change. I'm just telling you, as Solomon, who was king, observed oppression, and there were many who were under his foot as an oppressor because he was the king, and whatever he saw, he took. If he saw the wealth of another nation, he took it. He talks about this already. Okay? So from the mouth of someone who had oppressed, he's telling you, those that are oppressed, they don't have anything. They don't stand a chance. They don't stand a chance. In Haiti right now, there's a group of thugs, right? The gangsters, gangs. Haiti has experienced a total collapse of its government. Devastating natural disasters followed by the collapse of the government, and now gangs rule the land. Mob rule. The strong man rule. So, it you talk about a dystopian society. You thinking like the end of the world has come. It's just you can't even begin to imagine. Nonetheless, these guys had tremendous power, and they went and they captured some missionaries, 17 of them, and now they're holding them ransom. And that's how life is. So imagine if you lived in a war zone and people are fighting, and what can you do? Nothing. Or you rise up in a country where there's a dictatorial leadership, and you speak out against the oppression, and next thing you know, your head is on a stake somewhere as a warning to others. Or maybe in the early Americas, where the best way to produce wealth was to use people captured from another country, brought here, and then worked to death. And then if you decided you wanted to, get a little bit out of hand, they would just kill you, hang you from a tree. Okay. People talk about 400 plus years of oppression of black people in this country, and yet it continues. Where is the relief for those who are oppressed? Now, you can pick any country and you will find the oppressed. You will find the poor. They're always here. They will always be here as long as human beings run systems that manage the affairs of people. This is vanity and vexation of spirit. Meaningless. He concludes that the dead are better off than the living. Now imagine doing an assessment of how bad things are, and the conclusion to your research, the conclusion to your deep dive, the conclusion to all of your funded research into this, that, a third, and a fifth, and all of the think tanks and all of the community groups that got together, and we sifted through information, and we did polls, and we did studies of people. And at the end of all of that, the best advice you get, the conclusion that you come to is better to be dead. Now, that's an assessment of how bad it is for the oppressed. I want you to really wrap your head around this. This isn't not being able to have equity in terms of you being able to get cable and free phone relative to the folk that got brand new iPhone. What is number now? 13, 15? I don't know. All right. No, I'm talking about real oppression. Grind you into the dirt oppression. All right. The kind that you look and you say to yourself, the dead are better off. That's his conclusion. So I concluded. This is not my opinion. That's what it says. So I concluded that the dead are better off than the living. But most fortunate of all are those who are not yet born. Imagine that. Because this winds up someplace. In our society right now, in 2018, 600, I think in about, I'll round it off at 600,000. It's a little bit higher, but I can't get the exact. This is on the CDC's website. 600,000 people in the United States, not worldwide, in the United States, in 2018 were aborted. Aborted. They were killed in the womb before they were born. Now, this is not an abortion message. I'm simply saying that when one concludes that to be born is worse than living, you can see how a society engages in things to prevent the born, right? To prevent the unborn from being born so that they don't have to suffer the plight that those alive observe as too serious a means of living that the unborn are better off than those that are living, and the unborn are the most blessed of all. That's his conclusion. But most fortunate are those, right? Most fortunate are all are those who are not yet born, for they have not seen all the evil that is done under the sun. You know, the United States of America is giving away millions of vials of vaccine. Now, some might wonder, well, why are they doing that? Well, you know, China's giving away vaccine, and so are the Russians. Now, we're living in some very treacherous and very trying times. There's a lot of stuff going on, and we're not going to get into that, because at the end of the day, all of this is vanity and vexation of spirit. And at the end of the day, as the Bible talks about, you will be able to tell the signs of the times. All right, we've preached on that for decades. All right, we've been here almost 40 years. We've done all of it. We've not gone through tribulation and revelation and the end time studies and the studies before the flood and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, what you need to know is Jesus saves. If you die tonight in your sleep, will you go to heaven? As you see these things come to pass, the most important thing you could tell somebody isn't about the end of time, but rather that Jesus Christ is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and that he stooped down below the angels to pick up fallen man. That's the most important message. And the thing I love about Ecclesiastes is that it peels back the layers of the onion of what people go through in their daily lives. This is a testimony and an assessment and an analysis, a deep dive by the king who gave himself to know. He didn't send out a commission to find out the information. He went and found out himself. And at the end of his study, at the end of his research, he found that the best thing for a human being was to fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. Because there is a great equalizer, which is death. Everyone is going to die. Period. What will you do when that comes? The unborn have not witnessed all of the evil that is done under the sun. Then I observed, says the preacher, Solomon's son. It's David's son, Solomon, right? Then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors. My neighbor has a new car. Well, I'll be dipped in chocolate before I let his new car grace his driveway, and I ain't got a new car. My old clickety-clack, I want a new car too. Well, how can you get a new car? Well, you're going to have to buy it. You don't have the money to buy a new car. So what do? Well, I have to get some money. I need to get resource. So I either need a raise on the job, I need to find a better job, or I need to go and take someone else's money and transfer it into my account so that I can have it. Some folk will take the criminal road. Others will take the road of hard work and labor, which we've already discussed. But the motivation is the fact that my neighbor has a car. Envy. Right? Envy. Your neighbor is envious of you. You got a new car and they want one and they can't afford one. I observe that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors. But this too is meaningless. like chasing the wind, vanity and vexation of spirit. Imagine getting a $800 a month car note because your neighbor has a new car. So you went out and bought a new car. All right, car is $60,000, $58,000, which seems not so bad, but that's an $800 a month pay note. Then you got to get insurance. Now, of course, insurance, right? Insurance. You want to see how smart the artificial intelligence is? Alexa, how you spell insurance?
Assurance is spelled A-S-S-U-R-A-N-C-E.
Well, she thought I said assurance. But you could call her halfway anything and she'll answer you. All right. She's learning. She's ever learning. Your insurance is going to cost you the maximum because you have a brand new car. So where you were paying on your old get along jalopy a reasonable rate because it was old and junk, wasn't that bad. So now you're paying $300 a month in insurance. Now your whole automobile bill is $1,100. $800 a month plus $300 for insurance plus gasoline. And of course, as we all know, gas prices are going through the roof. So now your average gas price is $3.50 and rising. So when gas tops out at about $5 a gallon, all right, and 2 gallons is $10, all right, and your car hold how much gas? 10-gallon tank, right? So now or 20-gallon tank. So now you're paying all this extra money for what? Because your neighbor has a new car. That's crazy. You're a slave to your desires. It's meaningless. Like chasing the wind. Vanity and vexation of spirit. Fools fold their idle hands. Right? Fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin. And yet, better to have one handful, verse 6, yet better to have one handful with quietness than 2 hands with hard work and chasing the wind. All right. So here you are, both hands full, chasing after the wind, gaining nothing. The fool, back, right? The fool folds his hands, right? His idle hands. He's doing nothing. Nothing. He's doing nothing. Nothing. Lazy. Straight out. No soft pedaling bum. Shiftless. And it produces nothing, so he has nothing, so he comes to ruin. Or she. A she fool. A he fool and a she fool, right? So it leads to nothing. Leads to ruin. But the other one has 2 hands full and winds up chasing after the wind. Better to have one handful with quietness. Peace of mind, a settled spirit, a quiet heart, being satisfied in whatsoever state that you are in. You have what you need. If one has what one needs, one does not need or require more. All right? If you have what you need, you don't require more. I think a lot of people are finding this out as they go through this post-world global health issue, right? That we've been going through for the last, 20 months. A global health issue. And now people have been off and they realize, you know what? I've made it without having a new car. I've made it with only one person in the household working, and we have food, and we have extra money, and we are seeing one another, and we talk to one another. We go to our neighbors and talk to them. We may not go over their house, but their yard is next to our yard, and we exchange pleasantries over the fence while we both have outdoor barbecue, making hot dogs and French fries and hamburgers and cutting up a piece of cantaloupe or watermelon and just having a nice old time. Inexpensive. You have what you need. In the pattern for which we are encouraged to pray by Jesus, it's not a prayer. It's a pattern. When you pray in this manner. To our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be his name. His kingdom come, his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Right? Our daily bread. The things we need to sustain us come from the Lord. The Lord will provide those things that you need. The righteous are not forsaken. So the question is, do you trust the Lord? All right, because a lot of people say they trust the Lord. A lot of people say a lot of things, but because they say something doesn't make it so. Right? It's when faith and action are demonstrated. Right? Faith meets action. ABCs of faith. Action based upon a belief which forms a confidence in the heart and the mind. Right? So, are you acting on that which you believe? And does it form a confidence? People say stuff, but then they don't do anything. Like think tankism. Think tankism, air quotes, right? Think tankism. Let's get around and talk in a circle about the things that need to be done, and we think tank it, come up with a policy and a procedure, but then we don't execute it. And like legislators just passing law after law after law after law, but there's no implementation of said law. You're in the middle of the highway, in the middle of the desert, and the tire blows out on the bus, and everybody is sitting on the bus talking about how they need to change the tire because the tire is flat. Well, maybe we can make it with one flat tire. Don't be a fool. You do that, then we're going to really be in trouble. Someone need to get off the bus and fix the tire. Well, I don't know how to fix the tire. So now you got these people going back and forth. Then they're going to sit down and talk about how the tire was manufactured and how it probably got messed up, where we going to take the tire. No one changes it. There's a spare tire in there. But no one does anything. Talk relative to action. When you have what you need, you don't require more. Better to have one handful with quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. What does it profit you? You got both hands full and no time to enjoy anything. All you do is work in order to get the things that you say you need, but never enjoy, because all you do is chase after the wind. Because, of course, the reason you're working is to be like your neighbor, right? Get that new car. Verse 7 at the top of your screen. You're watching Light Source Victory Television live. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Verse 7. I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. Meaningless. This is the case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. He works hard for the money, so hard for the honey, right? He works hard for the money, so you better treat him right. I know the words of the song, but I'm being facetious. But let me stop before I get canceled. I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone, without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much money as he can, but then asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It is also meaningless and depressing. I mean, what are you working for? What are you working for? Two things I determined when I was about 20 years old. I think I was about 20. Because I was at Pratt & Whitney, and a guy at Pratt, I was working at Pratt & Whitney. I was 19 years old. I was working full-time at Pratt & Whitney. I was living downtown in a luxury apartment. The Richardson. I had the largest one-bedroom apartment in the building. I was the longest resident tenant at the time. I moved into the Richardson when BT's Food and Drink Emporium was being built. They milled the woodwork right there. So all of the woodwork you see was like, it didn't like come manufactured. They milled the woodwork. They were making the woodwork right there. I'd come home from Pratt & Whitney off on second shift, and I would go down there and I'd watch them. It was fascinating watching them put this place together. The detail and the handcrafted construction of this place. The third and fourth floors still were empty. They were constructing them. That's how long I had lived there when I moved out. I was the longest resident tenant when I moved out. And I was 19, and then I was, I think probably when I was around 20 or so, one of the guys at the job said that there's two things he did. He treated himself and spared no expense when it came to shopping for food, and he always made sure that his apartment was warm, or his house was warm. He was married. And that stuck with me. It stuck with me. He says, I work for a living. I will always eat whatever I want, and I will buy the best food I can buy. Not that I can afford, that I can buy. And he was going to be warm. And I live by that creed. Our house is 80 degrees, always in the winter. I don't cut it back to 65 and put on a jacket. We like fresh air. Not only is the house 80, we crack the windows so the air can get in. So it is seal up the house. Folks seal up the house because they don't want to lose any heat, and we pay for the heat because we work. How you gonna work for a living and then freeze to death because you have so many bills you can't afford the heat, and you're not gonna eat well? Eating well is as conscious a decision as looking good when you leave out the house. Some people will spare no expense on clothing and to look good, but then they won't eat well because they don't have the money. They choose to spend their money on other things. Now, if you work, the two things you should do, one, eat well, have heat, and save at least 1/4 of your pay. Those are the basic things. I learned that in school, the 1/4 of your pay, right? And you'll start off with nothing, but in time it grows. And then live within your means. One hand full. And then enjoy life. Right? Work your whole life and then don't have anything. Don't enjoy anything. That's sad. Here's an individual who should be able to have pleasure and enjoy something. He has no obligations. He has no burdens. There's no one pushing on him for anything. He can serve the Lord 110% of his time. Whatever time he's not working, he can give to the Lord. To do that as the Holy Spirit leads and orders his footsteps, that he might give glory and honor to the Lord. Right? 2 people are better than 1. Verse 9, speaking of being alone, right? 2 people are better than 1, for they can help each other succeed. You don't have to do it by yourself. Get someone to help you. If one falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Now, I remember when radio legend Brad Davis fell down the steps in his house. He's told the story on the radio. That's how I know. I only know because he said so. He fell down the steps at the house and he was on the floor and he couldn't get up. I mean, that's real. Help me, I fall, I can't get up. That's real. There's a lot as I get toward those golden days, right? So I'm 61, but as I talk to folks that are older than me, because I'm like the kid in my group, that falling down is that's not a joke. Once you get a certain age. So when I go up the steps, I hold on to the railing. I hold on to the railing when I come down the steps. If there are no railings, I take my time because it's no joke. I was on production yesterday. We cover the Harvard Board of Education. And the Harvard Board of Education meeting, by the way, was very interesting yesterday. You should take the time to watch it. It was long. It was very long. But it was good. I like long meetings. It was good. All right. I like long meetings because then I don't feel so bad about getting my check. But I was there. Now there's a stage. It was at Weaver. All right. And I was joking with the young folk there because I was gonna jump up onto the stage. Usually when I'm working, and so you give it a little 1-2 and you jump onto the stage. And I did do that. But at one point I stopped and I sat my little narrow self down on the stage and pulled my feet up and then went about my business. And I said to them, I better start acting like I'm 61 because if I jump up on the stage and just slip or miss, which is likely, and you hit your shin or break a bone or fall up, you lose your balance, you fall backwards with no support, break your back or something. See, these things become real. So you need to act like if you get hurt, it could damage you for a long time in a bad way. So prevention, right? So if you fall, well, Brad fell and there was no one to help him. And he had to wait for the guy to come who mowed his lawn and wait for him to come and knock at the door. When he knocked at the door, then Brad got his attention. And that's how he got up, as the story was told. He fell down the steps, if I'm not mistaken. Imagine falling in the bathtub, or you're going to your basement, you fall down the basement steps. This has happened to people. And you're alone, and there's no one to help you. When there's 2 and you fall, someone can help you up. If you're walking on the trail, okay, on the highways and byways of life, particularly as it was back then. And you're traveling along, and you fall. Someone can help you out of the ditch, right? But if you're alone, not only isn't there anyone to help you, when someone comes along, they might take what you have and leave you there, because there are bandits and robbers on the road. Now the bandits and robbers are using sophisticated means to rob you, like your telephone with robocalls and the internet with all kinds of things that you think you won but you didn't win, and scams. And the snake oil salesman. And the predatory lenders. All right. And elected officials whom the FBI raids and arrests for stealing $600,000 of emergency relief money. Right? The robbers are still here. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But if someone falls alone, right? But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated. But two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better. For a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Three is better. All right. A good friend of mine, long time associated with this very program, so I won't mention his name, but a very good friend of mine, he used to always joke, if someone were to jump us, he would run and get the police. I always thought that was kind of comical. So if there's three, then he could be a witness, right? You need three. In that case, you need three. Because if you got two and someone jump y'all and one of them runs to get the police, you by the time they get back with the police, all they can do is provide testimony of what happened. What had happened was we were walking down the street minding our business, and these guys jumped out from behind the bushes. They started hitting on my man. So I ran because I needed to get some help. And it makes no sense for both of us to be beat, right? I guess there's some logic to that. But two can defeat the attacker. But one, no. And always better to have three. That's why you generally try not to travel alone. Try not to travel alone. It is better to be a poor but wise youth than an old and foolish king who refuses all advice. Now that there is very, very powerful. That's powerful right there. Better to be a poor and wise youth. All right. A lot of times young folk got ideas, they have visions, they have things that they would like to do, and they're hindered by the old folk who don't want them to do anything but get out of their way, right? So they refuse to listen to good advice. So an old king, right? Because a king is a sovereign. Words mean things. The king is somebody with great authority. It's not just like, yo, that's my king, or honor to you, king. No. Real king. Not just a king in name only, but an actual real king. A king. You know what a king is? A king is one who exercises sovereign authority over the kingdom, the realm, right? We'll leave that alone. So I was going to use another example, but we won't go there. So the king is the legislative branch in the United States. If you were to compare our type of government, so it would be the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch in one. The king speaks. It is law. That's why they call our governor King Ned, because he is speaking. An edict. I was walking down the street and I saw some guys playing basketball, and I said, it doesn't seem right that they're out there playing basketball. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So, I think I'm going to have an executive order that says, no outdoor basketball playing in groups of more than 5, because it takes more than 5 to make a basketball team. So I think we'll have it just 5 people maximum, and they have to stay apart. So, you can't play basketball. I'm going to write an executive order. Yeah. The king speaks, it is law. Period. The king is also the judge. Since the king speaks the law, the king is fully within his authority as the sovereign to determine who breaks his edict. I have spoken, and thus it is. Let it be known throughout the land, and let it be known throughout the land. Dramatic effect. Need a little reverb. Where's my reverb at? Let it. No. Oh, here we go. That's a little over the top. There we go. Let it be known throughout the land that by order of His Excellency, the King of the realm, that hereforth and thereforth let it be championed abroad through the court and through the land to all the barons and the dukes by order of the king. All are required to bring 1 egg and a halfpenny forthwith upon pain of death for refusal. And thus it is. Right? Done. King said it. Now, all those who refuse to bring an egg and a halfpenny will be killed. It's not right or wrong. It's the king's authority, period. You refused to comply with an edict from the king, and therefore you shall be dealt with harshly. How dare they not comply with an order from the king? That's what a king is. The king could say, though he has not brought forth a halfpenny, I shall have mercy upon him, his soul, and his family, and they shall live. But their house shall be burnt down to the ground. Make it so. And it's done. Pity the country that has a king who's also a child, right? You got a king who's a child, knows nothing, becomes petulant in the middle of the night, orders something to happen, and boom, just like that. Right? That's the power of the king. Better to be a poor but wise youth. Now listen, a poor and wise youth is better than an old and foolish king. All right? He's lived long, has all the authority vested in him with his crown. He refuses the advice of anyone, and with all his power, all his authority, it is better to be poor but wise than to have the power of the king. Who acts in a foolish manner. Verse 14, top of the screen. Such a youth could rise from poverty and succeed. He might even become king, though he has been in prison. But then everyone rushes to the side of yet another youth who replaces him. Endless crowds stand around him, but then another generation grows up and rejects him too. So it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. Only what you do for Christ will last. At the end of the day, no matter what you see on the radio, what you see on television, read in the paper, hear on the radio, talk about with family, friends, and foe, the only thing that matters is that Jesus rose from the dead. And that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him should not perish but have everlasting life. Right? That's the message as you see these end times approaching. The message isn't about the time. The message is about the resurrected Christ. Understanding and knowing that the times in which we live are challenging, and that the times in which we live and you read through scripture are unfolding before your eyes could very well be the time that the word of God talks about. That's not the message. The message is compel those that don't know Jesus to come to know Jesus. That's the message. The message is, if you don't know Jesus and you're troubled by all the things that you see around you, why not try Christ? Amen. That's the message. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Amen. Jesus is Lord, my friends. Won't you call on his name today? Allow him to be Lord of your life. It's as simple as confessing that you fall short of his glory and asking him to save you. Then find yourself a Bible-believing church, join it, and study to show yourself approved. God bless you all. Keep you strong in the faith. We will see you here next time. God bless you. Good night.